Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. And look who's with us. Hey,
Hey, Pat.
hey, old timers.
Be here.
You remember that, old timers? You people have been around for a while. Welcome
Be
back
like
to the
one
show.
or two people.
George. Actually, George, when we mentioned your name the other day, I kind of said, because we hadn't confirmed if you were coming or not. I got a friend, and I said something like, "Oh, you old timers might know who's coming on. I wonder if he comes on." And several people were like, "Is it George? I hope it's George. I hope George is coming on." So there you go. How are you, man? It's nice to see you, and it's I'm sure it's nice for the people who know you to see you, and for the people who don't, because you were with us for. When this thing started off, we had some quite highfalutin ideas. And we had a whole bunch of New Zealand comedians and stuff involved. And I thought, this will be an easier sell in the media market because I thought I was slick and cool and knew what I was doing. And that never kind of happened. And then it evolved from sort of trying to do something big and almost mainstreamy to sort of me, you and Chewy doing it mostly. And then you went off and got a real job working in media. And gosh, what has it been? How long since you've been on? Has it been a year?
Yeah, probably easily, and it's changed a lot. I mean, viewership is the most visible way in which it's changed.
Yeah, right.
But it's still you and Chewy doing your stuff. I see it every now and then.
Yep.
And it's amazing. I mean, you're a hustler. Pat's a hustler. People know. It's just bam, bam, bam. Constantly on his projects and all this sort of thing. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But obviously the media landscape has changed or is changing. You and I have had conversations about, certain bosses saying, "Oh, who would want to, listen to 2 hours of some blokes talking?" And it's like,
Yeah.
Well, there was, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously it's a medium that slowly took off in general. And also what helps is a committed, loyal audience as well that engages.
And I think we've definitely got that. I mean, you'll probably see people in the chat who you remember, but there are people who are already saying, "I remember George," going around in the chat at the moment. So can you see the chat with your connection at the moment?
No, I'll bring up the YouTube.
Can you bring? Oh, I can probably figure out a way to make it work for you as well. I think at times we hide the chat from guests because sometimes people can be a bit nasty in the chat. I think those people don't need that. Bring up YouTube and I'll figure out how to put the chat up. All right. And yeah, it's a fun. Do you want to? It's been a fun time, and you're a part of this. You're a part of the foundation of this. Do you want to tell people about what you're doing at the moment at all? You don't have to because it's kind of work outside of here, but the kind of stuff that you're into.
No, it's all good. I work at the local paper here in Dunedin, so doing journalism, which is great. So when this started, I would have been doing the university thing, tutoring and postgrad, and the theory of media was my thing, and interested in all sorts of things, mainly how war is mediated in news media and video games and all that kind of thing. But yeah, finally, as you said, got a real job, sub editing. So I'm one of the grunts that lays out the paper and cleans up the copy, makes it bigger or smaller, and all that sort of thing. And it's interesting. It's obviously interesting times, uneasy times, but we make do.
Yeah. Now, I was just going to say, I've brought that chat up. I've ticked that guests can see it, so you can probably see it in your StreamYard system now.
Sweet. Nice.
Probably.
Yep.
Yeah, cool, man. So I'm just looking forward to having a chat with you tonight. I'm just going to do something while you're talking to me. I'm going to turn off your echo cancellation and I'm going to turn off reduce background noise because you've got headphones on. Talk to me again now.
Test 1, 2,
3. You're a bit soft. You're a bit fadey in the background.
Test.
Maybe I'll put the reduce mic background noise on again. Just speaking with your big boy voice. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Yeah. The other thing is I'm right next to big road that people speed down.
Now people are saying in the chat that you're a bit soft as well. Turn yourself up, bro.
All right.
It's funny. We just had that exact chat before we came on. Me and we had a chat, us two, about mic levels and stuff, and it was all going fine. So you'll be right. Just shout out in the chat if it sounds a bit low. About if George's chat sounds too low in the chat, you can tell us about his chat, and we'll make it work.
Well, that's another great thing about the medium, right? Is it's a little bit on the piss sometimes, and we're all good with it. It's not the simulated world of television where everything's all prim and proper.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that works. And I know I kind of bang on a little bit about mainstream media, and I bang on a little bit about how mainstream media is trying to do digital podcasting media, and they're getting it wrong. What they're actually just doing is they're making radio they put on the internet, or they're making television shows that they just broadcast on their websites, and they think that's digital media. They think that's podcasting, and it's not. It's something very different. And even that, even stylistically, it's different, getting a beer out of the fridge and doing it while we're talking, and even the errors, that you wouldn't see. We fumble over our words, and we don't proclaim to be the smartest people in the country. In fact, we like to be the dumbest person in the room and get the smart people on to tell us things. And it works, and it builds community. And the people who are here now, I know, will say one of the reasons they're here is we just talk like them, Yeah. We just, and it's kind of the advancement of back in the 1960s. You had to sound like you were from the BBC to read the news, and that slowly went away. In the 90s, radio stations, you stopped talking like this all the time. Hubbard Hughes, top of the hour. That kind of started to go away, and now it's just you talk like your neighbour, talk like the person next door, and that makes sense to people. So and you're being told in the chat, Kiwi Kurt says that I stuff up the sound all the time. So So whatever happens is my fault anyway. Hey, before we get into this is another new thing since you've been on board. We'll have to hook you up with some. This month we do a drop each month with gear. June's merch drop is there. Now I'll be doing the first lot of product ordering tomorrow. Okay, so I order on Friday, and then I order next Friday. So if you'd like your merch sooner rather than later, you do need to order before midnight. Or probably realistically before 9 tomorrow morning. But if you do it during the show, I'll give you a shout out as well. And remember, a couple of the specials, because it's my birthday this month, and it's Chewy's birthday this month. And of course, didn't tell you this, but it's George's birthday today. It's George's birthday this month. So George, then me, then Chewy, all in the space of about 4 days. And because of that, we're giving you the gift. So we're giving you a chance to have crew t-shirts, which are normally only available to the patrons. But we thought we'd do it with you guys if you want this week. If you want to be part of the crew, there's a crew t-shirt. There's also BHN hoodies, BHN t-shirts. And if you want personalized gear, you can get that as well. Now, someone messaged me and said, I don't know where to put the name in. When you order your personalized gear, right, and you go into the cart, see down here, order special instructions, that's where you write your name. And if you write your name there, then we'll know what name to print on the back of your personalised gear. Right there is his name. The other thing is we do like to run our buffer gear. Do you know what our buffer gear is, George? You heard that story? So Margaret Mutu was on with us, and Chewy said at the end of the interview, what can we as non-Māori kind of do to help? Do to help Māori in their fights, in their quest. And she, long story short, said, be a buffer. Stand as a buffer between Māori and the Crown, and if they won't listen to us, maybe they'll listen to you. So that's what launched the Buffer brand. And we do it a different brand every month. And we realized last month how we don't have to be just a buffer for Māori. We can be a buffer for lots of areas where maybe we are not aligned. So last month we did a Palestinian flag coloured buffer. And that was supporting the charity Medical Aid to Palestinians, MAPS. And this month I thought, because of what the government's just done with the 13 cancer drugs by not funding it, then let's help out the Cancer Society. So every buffer product bought in this 2-week merch drop, t-shirt or hoodie, and then navy blue, I know the other one looks a bit more purple than that. I still haven't fixed up that spelling mistake, have I? Well, 25% of the profits go straight to the Cancer Foundation. Very important to let you know that Cancer Foundation is not affiliated with this at all. We're just raising some money for them, and then we're going to give it to them. So buffer hoodies, buffer t-shirts, 25% of the profits go to Cancer Foundation, and BHN will match that 25% as well. So whatever we raise, if it's $100, $200, $300, $400, $500 from the sale of tops, then BHN will put the same amount in on top to give to Cancer Foundation. I think we gave about $350 to MAPS last year, so it's not going to be the difference between cancer drugs or not, but it's something little. We want to help when we can. And of course, the other thing that it is about the Cancer Society. We're not affiliated with them. I'm going to keep saying that to make sure it's clear. If you don't have enough for a hoodie, which also supports us as well, but you want to support the Cancer Society, just go straight to cancer.org.nz and go to their donate button. Like if you've got $10 you want to chuck in there, just go give it straight to them. You don't have to worry about us. Just go give it straight to them, and that'd be cool. So that's us, George. It's a bit of a funny old night for me. The people watching already know the story from a bit earlier, but today, a year ago, what time is it? It's 9 o'clock. Yeah, I was probably sitting in one of my sister's lounges, starting to prepare a funeral for Dad. So today, the 13th, was the day last year that Dad passed. And I left Dunedin at about, that 4 o'clock flight that goes to Auckland, always seems to be 4 and it lands about 6. I was about to drive out to the airport on the 4 o'clock flight, knowing he was passing. It wasn't a surprise. Me and my siblings had that horrible conversation probably a couple of days ago where Dad had some internal issues and they could have put him under the knife to see if they could fix him, but they thought putting him under the knife he'd probably die from that. And so we had to decide, does he go under the knife and die on the table, or do we let him be comfortable for the last couple of days and just, make his way off? And so we decided the latter, which is a really weird conversation to have. It's very strange thinking about going, okay, let's decide this person's going to die. It's very, very strange. And so that had been decided over the phone with me and my sisters. And then I was jumping on a plane today to go up there because we knew it was getting close, and probably half an hour before I left the house to go to the plane. So it would have been maybe 2 o'clock-ish. Sister phones me and says, yep, he's just gone and he's passed, and, get up here when you can. So I was up there at 6 or 7 o'clock and started planning a funeral, and tomorrow was my birthday. And so my selfish father decided he'd die a day before my birthday, which ruined all of my plans. But yeah, that was it. So it's a bit of a weird old day, to be perfectly honest with you. But it is what it is, life goes on. Birthday for me tomorrow, going out tomorrow night with partner and some kids. And probably a quiet weekend at home, I think. So not to belabor everybody or belabor the point and make everyone feel sad and bad. It's a bit of a different time for me this year. It's a bit strange when you think about, even though I'm an old man myself, there's a strange journey when my older sister is now the matriarch of the family because both my parents have gone. And now me and my sisters are the generation that our kids look up to as the old ones because their grandparents have gone. So now we are that echelon of old people that my parents were. So yeah, it's interesting times, but that was a year ago for me.
It's funny, all my mates, having kids. I turned 33 today, and they're all having kids. I'm sort of having my second wind of adolescence, or of youthfulness at 33. So a second wave of partying and dancing around, and a bit of drinking and stuff. It's good. It's good.
Can I say, I haven't seen you for a while, but you're looking great. You're looking real healthy.
I feel good. Routine. It's all about routine. It's all about, that's pretty much it. Doing the same thing every day helps.
Have a super chat already that we'll just throw up because it's more about you than any story we're doing. Gareth, thank you for the 350.
Thanks, Gareth.
Late fee. Our guys have decided they offer late fees if they're late. I don't know. I do know who started it. I'm looking at you, Nick. But that comes up every now and again. Late fee. George returns. Stoked to see you. Thank you for the super chat, Gareth. Appreciate that very much. The other thing is, and I don't know how much you follow the world of sort of alt-right media, George, but we've talked a couple of times about Mr. Duncan Garner being a broadcaster who has admitted publicly that he would have voted for Trump when the Trump election was happening up against, I think, Hillary, that one, the first one. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the clip and it's like, oh, that's, maybe he's not as far right as that. Maybe he's just like, he drank some of the Kool-Aid that said how bad the Clintons were and that he was doing it as a protest vote. But no, he was on the platform today and he's on the platform tomorrow doing talkbacks. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. Someone filling in doing radio for Michael Laws following Sean Plunkett. You got to kind of go, okay, maybe that's where we are. We now see, and everyone's now clear on where Mr. Garner's politics lies. Mind you, in thinking, in saying that, if Karen Plunkett phoned me and said, "Do you want to fill in?" I probably would. It'd be fun. Yeah.
With the Trump vote, I often think about this in terms of the context of the world rather than American context. Obviously, you don't want Trump, but I often wonder if Trump instead of Biden had just like somehow accidentally bring peace to the Middle East. Like he'd just bumble his way into a ceasefire. Yeah. Whereas Biden would keep the war machine going, as we know. Trump might just accidentally, do something good. That's probably the only silver lining I can think of.
A lot of the things that Trump claims credit for are either typically lies, or he did stumble into them, like he claims about we had immigration was next to nothing when I was, and that's because it was COVID was happening. The world had shut down. Of course, it was next to nothing. And gas prices were at the lowest. Yeah, of course, because no one was driving. So there's the things he stumbled and bumped. And one of the ones is the only president to not be in when any wars were started, I think, or conflicts were started. And I think once again, he claims that now as being the anti-war president, but I think that was one he tripped over and stumbled and bumbled into, not something he actively planned for.
Yeah, he sort of toyed with the anti-interventionist sort of isolationist US foreign policy. But as happens with US presidents when they're in power, the military-industrial complex really has the final say on things, and to some extent anyway. And the president is powerless to stop the forward motion of US foreign policy of the war machine. It's it keeps chugging along regardless of who's in the White House.
Yeah. All right. Hey, let's jump into the first story. I think we'll talk about boot camps to start off with, because there's not a lot of video for this. It's more of a written product. But this was analysis done by academics, I think, out of Victoria University. Victoria University academics Simon Davies, Clare-Ann Fortune, Karen Salmon. Oh, that word's gone. The fish is a salmon. There you go. Got it. I had to say fish first. And Linda Fatialofa have written this, because put together this piece of research, and it says thus: boot camps for young offenders are back, but researchers, people I just mentioned, say the psychological evidence that they're ineffective never went away. Boot camps for young people who commit serious offending are coming back. The coalition government has promised to pilot military-style academies by the middle of this year, despite a wealth of international and New Zealand evidence that boot camps do not reduce offending. And that link went to this piece of evidence: effectiveness of 12 types of interventions in reducing juvenile offending and antisocial behaviour. Part of the summary of this says this: based on the most recent systematic research in each category, the most effective interventions are parent training, focused deterrence, child skills training, cognitive behavioural therapy, mentoring and family therapy. Anti-bullying programs, anti-cyberbullying programs and pre-court diversion programs are quite effective, while school exclusion, getting expelled, reduction after school programs and boot camps are the least effective. The story goes on to say it's been encouraging to see this evidence receive extensive media coverage and expert analysis. Less encouraging, however, has been the Minister for Children's reported rejection of expert advice that the boot camp model is flawed and ineffective. I have a very short clip here of TVNZ Breakfast Show talking about the effectiveness of boot camps or not. I think this piece is about 60 seconds. Let's have a listen.
Morena, I don't have much hope at all, to be honest, and I'm appalled that this idea has come back around again after generations of failed attempts. It really is reheating something that has never had any success and really causes long-term harm.
What are your fears? What happens in those boot camps for people who don't know and think, well, they're just going to have a bit of tough talk and a bit of tough love. What actually occurs inside those boot camps?
What we know from the evidence presented to the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care, from Borstall's and corrective trainings in the 70s and 80s, whakapakiri in the 90s and 2000s, and Moerangi Treks, places like that, they become really abusive because there are people there who aren't equipped to deal with young people who have complex needs. And so it might start out with good intentions, but often there's a lot of physical and verbal abuse. There's a lot of hierarchy involved because military involves hierarchy. Even if you're not really part of the military, if you're just playing at it, you still use these hierarchies. And what happens is that the older kids become enforcers and perpetrate abuse on the smaller and younger ones at the camps. And they become dumping grounds for all sorts of kids.
So there's a snippet of the information that those researchers were also citing. I'll just read, there's a couple of more sentences, George. I'll just finish this thing off and then we can get to chatting. The article goes on to say, in practice and in the criminal justice system in particular, punishment rarely works that way. It has long been argued that punishment which is immediately certain and severe will deter crime, but most offending goes undetected initially. Punishment is often delayed and more severe sentences have not been shown to deter offending. Serious offending in particular appears not to be deterred by punishment. Later on in the article, there's a section about when punishment meets trauma. Perhaps the main problem with the assumption that young people who offend seriously just need some discipline is that they have often already experienced more and more severe discipline than most. We might also call this abuse. Recent New Zealand evidence found 95% of a sample of 63 young people involved in ram raid events had been exposed to family harm. 65% reported 5 or more such occasions. And then, as every good piece should do, focus on what we know works, what to do. There is good evidence that several different interventions, ones that have therapeutic focus, involve relevant support people and work on building skills for living pro-socially, can reduce reoffending and other antisocial behaviour. Nor does it mean young people who seriously offend should be exempt from consequences, but we should be honest about the purpose and likely outcome of those consequences and accept that punishment alone will not change behaviour. They haven't worked in the past, or the experts say they're not going to work, George, and yet this government seems to want to do it again. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess from the government's point of view, or from the political point of view, it seems to roll back around at a time when obviously there is, especially under a national government or just coming out of an election year, especially with ram raids, gangs and regulation around gang patches and all of that. And also, here in Dunedin, the stabbing in the bus hub.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Which was a big thing for Dunedin. Obviously, there's violence throughout the country. This has popped up again as a solution. I liked what the woman there mentioned about hierarchies. These things I imagine would function much like some of the gangs that people would fall into. In terms of these contexts where she mentioned the word enforcer, where there are people,
The
older kids that have to play the role of enforcing, the party line, as it were. But yeah, obviously, boot camps in general and full on punishment like that does not reduce reoffending, as the article which I had read, actually I would recommend people read it. It was on The Conversation, which is a great free resource with lots of academics writing there. But yes, does not reduce reoffending. In fact, could increase it.
Rua says, makes good headlines but crap policy. we got a chance to talk to Chester Burrows. In fact, you might have been on that show, George, because I remember we've seen you a couple of times when you popped up in replays, and he basically said to us the whole, this is just before he passed away, the whole idea about banning gang patches is good copy, but bad policy. And actually didn't read it out this time, but there's a part of the actual article that says boot camps do not appear to be going away. They are seemingly popular with the public and will therefore likely remain popular with politicians. But the evidence is clear in the different forms tried to date, they do not reduce reoffending. So again, makes for a good headline, makes for a good bumper sticker, makes for the appearance of being tough on crime, but it's one of these things that we always say, don't we want to do things that are going to give us, Mr. Luxon, the word you love, the best outcome? And evidence the world over says boot camps don't do that. So they must literally, okay, let's be generous. They must literally just be deluded. That's being generous. In other words, saying they're not just lying for votes, but they must either be deluded and think for some reason this will work this time and it's never worked before, or the other side of that is they're literally only doing it because it gets good copy, good headlines, and gives them the appearance of being tough on crime, even though it doesn't work, which would be really sad if that was the case, but politics these days.
As the article suggests, it like appeals to, a common sense approach, which, when someone says, and this is what the article is saying as well, when someone says, or it's suggesting anyway, when someone says common sense, it's a common sense approach, discipline, blah, blah, blah. Always, that should always trigger alarm bells for us. That common sense is a sort of something that is ideologically constructed. We have decided that is common sense, right? It's not something that is articulated scientifically or anything like that. We have decided as a society this is common sense, and a disciplinary approach is one of those things. So we think, okay, yeah, maybe these people do need a bit of discipline, and obviously, the team building aspect of this, and having some sort of purpose. I was talking about routine with myself before. These are all good things, but a military style boot camp as punishment is not the solution. And as you say, it's an idea from the Dark Ages, right? These aren't new. They're a better world is possible sort of ideas. These are old ideas that someone like National brings out time and time again, as you say, to create headlines and push a narrative.
It's funny, actually, when you said as a punishment, I was thinking, yeah, because you're going to punish these young people by giving them to play pretend soldiers. It's like there is, obviously, the military can sort some people out. But I guess when you hear those stories of a kid with a hard upbringing that went into the army and straightened themselves, typically they have agency in that. They're like, yes, I'll go. Whereas this is basically, you're being thrown into a prison cell, but you're being thrown into a situation where you have to do it. Maybe that's part of the reason that we don't see the success rate, because if the participant has no agency in what they're going to do, then why would they make it work? We all have to come to a point in our lives, whether it's, a young person who's as a reoffender, or a person who needs to lose weight, or a person who has addiction or whatever. We have to come to a point where we're actually really willing to step into the next phase, and just being thrown into an area with, whatever the equivalent of a sergeant major is these days, who aren't trained to look after children, likely with mental health issues and with behavioural issues, and thinking they can just squash them and have them come out better people. It's just, when you say it like that, it's just logic that says it's not going to work, let alone anything else.
Yeah. A few people in the chat mentioned the limited volunteer service, or limited service volunteer, or whatever that program was. I remember when I was on the dole, them, trying to sign people up to that. And I guess there is definitely a place for this sort of thing. Boy Scouts is obviously another institution that has historically this function in society of discipline, of keeping the boys in line and all these kind of things. But I think, over the years we've obviously learned, as the conversation piece that you've shown articulates, is is we've learned that that's not the sole solution. That that there's a whole other set of therapeutics solutions that they put forth that obviously have had better outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, like I can go back and find what they were, but can you imagine in a boot camp scenario them using those therapeutic focus, supporting people, working on skills for living pro-socially? That doesn't. I'm thinking more Full Metal Jacket boot camp.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to be as serious as that, but
no.
Doesn't sound like the place that they're going to get that kind of that. So we've been told that works, but we're going to do something completely different, and we're going to try and convince you that it's going to be different. Anyway, there are a few super chats that, and you'll forgive me, team. You know that that Chewy often keeps an eye on the chat and stuff. George, you're welcome to do that while you're there, but I operate everything else, and I'll do my best to keep up with the chats, and not to try and twist your arm to do a super chat, but they are easier to see because they highlight themselves. And Anna just wants to say, I normally don't make it in time to watch live, so here's a few bucks. Oh, thanks, Anna. Appreciate the super chat there. Shayad. Kia ora, guys. Not sure if someone's already asked this, but did you see the debate on the Hui a few days ago? It was quite good, I thought. I have it in my system upstairs to watch. I'm going to watch it over the weekend. So no, I haven't seen it yet. What about you, George? Did you see the debate? I've been hearing good things.
No, I mean that's one of the funny things about being back on BHN is, and I work at a newspaper. I read the news all day, but I'm sort of out of the loop at some of these topics that come across in the chat.
Yeah. Frosty for the super chat, thank you. I appreciate that. $5. Speaking of broadcasters going down the deep end, have you seen Paul Henry as a guest at ACT's conference? Yeah, again, I saw some headlines. I mean, that's who Paul Henry is. I have worked alongside Paul Henry on a couple of different occasions and been involved with things he's been doing. And again, that's who he is. Some of these people who are very good broadcasters, and there's no question he's a very good broadcaster. He's quite pardon me, quite bombastic and quite fun to work around. But yeah, I remember the comment he made about when he lost the job over in Australia and he came back and there was another broadcaster who I can't think of right now who'd also lost work, and they went back to work, and his response was, well, they can't afford not to work, meaning I've got all the money in the world that if I don't want to work, I won't work. So that's what you're dealing with Paul Henry. And finally, Junk Rig Sailor, thank you for your super chat there. 1 kid out of 100 will do well at boot camp, and ZB will interview him and will wax lyrical about the camp and how it gave purpose to his life. Yeah, I mean, we should probably say that when we say it's not going to work, that means it's not going to get the best bang for your buck. It might work for a few people, but other ways would work for more. But yeah, that's a very good observation, Junk Rig.
Yeah, because the purpose it's teaching is to follow rules and get fit, and getting fit would be all good. But these people that are candidates for the program obviously have had a problem with authority, and again, to refer back to the article in this section when it talks about how basically boot camp would just further the trauma of the abuse of authority that some of these people have already faced, then it's just going to recycle the problem.
I was thinking as well, and Kiwi Skirt, if you can handle this from your end. Kiwi Skirt's one of our moderators out there, George. We will open up Discord tonight, depending on how long we're going to be here for. But I was thinking if you want to have a chat with us, have a chat with George, you can jump onto Discord, and I'm sure mods in the chat will be able to put up the link to Discord. I'll go jump in there now-ish, so if anyone's in there, you'll hear us through Discord. Here we go. There's me jumping into the into the live call-in. So I'm now in there and I'm connected. So yeah, we'll look at doing that at the end of the hour as well. If anyone wants to jump into the waiting room, you guys know how to do this. You get in there and get in the waiting room, and if you want to have a chat with us about any of the topics from tonight or anything else, then get in there and we'll do another quick one. Okay, George, let's get into this topic that probably is more your bag than mine. We talked about it this afternoon. The second most powerful man in China visits New Zealand. I often look at one of the things we do here, George, you know this, is we commentate on the commentators. We critique the critiquers. And the TVNZ story on this is like 4 minutes, and the News Hub one's like 2.5 minutes. And it's interesting. I'm not saying this nefariously, but it's interesting that the News Hub one didn't include any of the protests, whereas the TVNZ one did. Obviously, just probably a time thing. They picked what was most important, but I think the protests are a pretty interesting part of this whole thing, having the second most powerful man from China out here as well. Here's TVNZ and the conversation around, it's the premier, isn't it? The premier of China, bilateral conversations with our hairless leader.
Mutual benefit and win-win cooperation. That's the Chinese Premier's promise of the relationship with New Zealand. Li Qiang's visit is the first by a high-ranking Chinese leader in more than 7 years. But aside from the formal greetings and talks, it was a battle of the banners on the streets. Political editor Mikey Sherman has more. Yeah,
so it's interesting that TVNZ, this was the lead part of the lead story was about the protests, and News Hub didn't even focus on it at all. Again, not saying it's anything nefarious like News Hub's not wanting to show it, but it was an interesting editorial decision. Actually, this is kind of what you do, George, make editorial decisions about what's in and what's out, whatever. What you got any thoughts around that? Just a timing thing?
Sometimes it can just be totally accidental or coincidental, but there's definitely always an eye towards what is presented and what isn't. I guess it's their job, but I wouldn't read into that specifically too much. Maybe they didn't find it that interesting or something, or maybe their cameraman wasn't there.
Let's have a look at the story. First of all, there's about 30 seconds on the protest and they go to the actual meetings.
As China's second most powerful leader, Li Qiang, arrived in the New Zealand capital today, there was excitement.
欢迎欢迎热烈欢迎 it means warm welcome.
There was also concern.
We're protesting against the killing, the murder of innocent Falun Gong people in China.
Chinese flag bearers purposefully covering over a banner accusing China of organ harvesting. Police forced to break up confrontation.
No touching each other's flags. No touching each other's flags.
Security was tight.
It is kind of a nice change of angle where you look at the protests happening in America and it's no hitting each other, and in New Zealand's like, stop touching each other's flags.
Yeah.
Don't let your material touch their material. Keep it apart. It's kind of a Kiwi way of keeping the order from these police officers, which is quite nice. But it's that idea about, in China, there's no dissent, is there? You can't show them up. You can't literally have these conversations. I remember every time I get a politician on that I think is valid for, I did it with James Shaw, not a part of the conversation, but I just asked him about Taiwan and China. And you can see the butthole.
I remember this.
Yeah, the butthole puckers up, because it's like, whoa. Because even for our politicians, kind of getting some kind of, because they want to support the people of Taiwan being independent, but they can't say it because our largest trading partner, and so you got to toe the line a little bit, which is a bit scary with a big, massive country.
It happened recently the other day with Christopher Luxon. He was somewhere in the Pacific Niue or something, and to avoid rocking the boat, he wouldn't even refer to China by its name, and the reporter was like, why aren't you saying China? And he did the classic, oh look, blah blah blah, sensitivity around the topic, or strategic, and he rabbited it on about something. But
because when you get to those superpowers, I know democracy, whatever we consider that to be, better, yada yada, but at their absolute core, what they want to do and how they want to be perceived in the world, are any of them any better than each other? I know we can say China bad, we can say Russia bad, but America's done some pretty terrible things around the world, still doing it in some places. There's no white hats being worn anymore, George. Everyone's wearing a black hat. We just have a team with a black hat on it.
Yeah, and there never was, and I guess that's sort of the point that I wanted to get to, and why I chose this topic for talking about, because I can use it as a vehicle to talk about geopolitics in general. But we don't need to we can make that decision about who is bad and who's worse, but really at the end of the day, there's two superpowers that the Pacific is a strategic location, and we're in the Pacific, and but I think there's a third way, and experts like Robert Patman that's been on here before think there's a third way as well, where we don't have to choose a side. We have chosen a side very strongly with the United States. I mean, more than people would know, more than we're allowed to know. Remember in March there was the story about how the US had basically been using the GCSB, piggybacking on the GCSB for their spy programs, the NSA spy programs, without anyone knowing, without the minister responsible for the GCSB knowing. And Nikki Hager will tell you that that spy software, that program, is used for, illegal target and kill operations throughout the world, illegal American war crimes, basically, things against international norms and law regularly on a regular basis. So, it's clear that that New Zealand, as a member of Five Eyes, has chosen which side we're on.
Yep.
And I think I'm with someone like Robert Patman that there is another particular way. I'd go even further. I feel like we can have a more independent foreign policy than ever before. I feel like we're in a position to, without severing trade ties or all these sort of scary notions that people talk about.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I was going to say as well. I mean, we've got to be careful on the chat because there's some rabble rousers in there. Someone called Chow I.
Hey, Chewy.
Chow I. Hi from the bad place. The bad place is Timaru. You say we've made a choice. Have we made a choice, or has a particular government at a particular time made a choice? Like Five Eyes, for example, and we're now talking about AUKUS. And as you've just said it, you mentioned Nikki Hager. I have connections to Nikki Hager, so I've written his name down. We'll try and get him on, have a talk about it. Or I can't see this government being the one that wants to be so independent. Like, this doesn't seem to feel like the right ones to do it. And the people who signed us up to the Five Eyes, I guess every government then continued on. I mean, once you're in, can you get out? Is it like leaving a gang? You got to get beaten out as well?
There's I don't think it's really the government of the day sort of thing. As you say, it's been going on for a long time. We made the decision to be aligned with the United States a long time ago. It's sort of part of a historical context in terms of being a British colony and all that kind of thing. But I mean, that if we are talking about specific governments, joining AUKUS Pillar 2 was something being explored by the previous government, by the Labour government and National, looking like they're going to, accelerate that and, join this pillar of this alliance that is supposedly, a part of the good sort of part of it, the safe part, the non-nuclear part that involves technology sharing, which is really basically about getting together with the United States and the Five Eyes partners and making things that kill people better or cause destruction. Basically, that's what it's really about.
I have a connection with a guy called Adrian Leeson as well. Adrian Leeson was one of the guys who got his sickle out and took down the spy base on the top of the South Island. He was the guy who went in and took it down. Maybe it's time for me to connect. Probably he's a massive hippie and he lives out in the Wops and he has no internet connection. But maybe it's time to see if I can get him on as well. It'd be a good chat. Maybe we could do a Friday special or something.
That's what the other thing that's in March came to light was that we were told that spy base was basically inoperational, and now as I say, it comes to light in March that it's being used as part of this NSA program that was piggybacking on New Zealand intelligence services without anyone knowing.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the story, shall we? This feels very much like Chewy's here. We just talk for 10 minutes between clips. We'll keep going. Here we go.
as Premier Li Qiang exited his vehicle and waved to the crowds.
It is quite a moment. It doesn't get much bigger than Li Qiang, the Premier of China.
Economically, China remains our largest export partner, commanding significant focus. But regional security is of competing concern.
There is a great fear of military confrontation at some point between China and the West.
This year marks the 10th anniversary of the comprehensive strategic partnership between China and New Zealand. Today saw a range of announcements on improving market access, including for infant formula and kiwi berries.
These arrangements will further support strong cooperation between New Zealand and China on trade, on economic and environment issues.
New Zealand is welcome to increase your market share in China by capitalising on your strengths.
But just this year, it was revealed Chinese state-sponsored hackers launched a...
Yeah, how do you have that conversation sitting across from the Premier going, hey, you know that time you broke into our computers? What was that fucking all about? You know, like, how do you have that conversation? I'd love to be a fly on that wall.
I guess, yeah, this is international diplomacy. Is that it's that tightrope that you have to walk by its nature, right? Because no one's going to get along.
Yeah, 100%.
Cyber attack on our parliament in 2021. And there's the AUKUS argument. Australia, the UK and US partnering over nuclear-powered submarines under Pillar 1. Now New Zealand is considering joining Pillar 2, aimed at enhanced technology sharing.
This afternoon, I also discussed with the Premier a number of issues that are important to New Zealand's interests. And as you would expect, this includes issues on which our perspectives differ.
It is natural that we don't always see eye to eye with each other on everything, but such differences should not become a chasm that blocks exchanges and cooperation between us.
This visit by Li Qiang today will be another...
Should not become a chasm. In other words, yeah, we've done stuff, you've done stuff, we're going to join things, you're not going to... We shouldn't. We shouldn't let, things in the past get in the way of the future. Yeah, we've all done stuff. Yeah, I know you guys have done stuff to us. Like what? We've all done stuff. We've all done stuff. Wasn't my fault. Yeah, we were separated at the time. We've all done stuff.
Another chance for China to put its case behind closed doors with Christopher Luxon for New Zealand to stay out of AUKUS, and perhaps just to remind New Zealand what it could potentially lose.
Plenty to think about for the New Zealand government, as the public equally had plenty to say and debate as well.
Well, Mikey's with
there was
us.
one really interesting thing that did come from it, though, and I think Mikey talks about it in this part of the conversation, where it seems that one of the things that they've agreed to is no visas for New Zealand citizens to go to China. So I think that's a really interesting advance. I mean, we are at the bottom of the world and we travel all over the place. We are a travelling people. To have a country of the size and breadth of China to holiday in, to investigate, to visit without the need for, some of the bureaucracy of getting into other countries is actually a really interesting little tidbit in amongst all of this.
Yeah, I guess we also forget about our cultural and, especially us Pākehā, sometimes forget about our cultural historical ties to China. At being in Dunedin, you're sort of reminded of it, sort of. I mean, it gets called a Scottish city, but I always say that it was also, a Chinese city in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, very good. Lots of chat going on at the moment. Thanks for sending all your stuff through, guys. Peter Sim has said, for a $2 super chat, thank you. A guest suggestion is Anne Marie Brady. I'm not sure who that is. Do you know who Anne Marie Brady is?
No.
I should look it up. We can find out who it is. All right.
Oh, I will also say in terms of, I think I saw a comment or two about, talking about international politics and when, there might be domestic issues in New Zealand. I think these are important conversations, especially the ones that I might harp on about, the big bad American empire. But they're important in the context of what's going on in Gaza at the moment. And, I'm being quite happy and in some ways surprised with how that has caught on in New Zealand, that conversation about Gaza, but also linking it to our place in the world and our relationship with the United States, who could in a lot of ways, end the suffering in Gaza tomorrow. They could put a lot of pressure on Israel. People will say that's unrealistic, blah blah blah, but they could. They have a lot to answer for in terms of the suffering. There.
Anne-Marie Brady is a New Zealand academic and professor of political science at the University of Canterbury.
Oh, yes, I do know the one.
Yeah, I know the name as well. I'm just thinking, actually, sometimes we talk, news stories, sometimes we talk kind of thematically around things. Like last night we talked about being brainwashed. And I don't know why, maybe bounced off what the back of you're saying there a little bit. I'm thinking about sort of patriotism and nationalism again. Do you know who Brianna Wu is? US left-wing kind of podcaster and commentator and caught up in Gamergate, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was listening to because I listen to everything, yeah. I listen to progressive stuff, to right-wing stuff, to centrist stuff, to whatever, international stuff, local stuff. And she was on a podcast today talking about trans people being in the Coast Guard, and the way she talked about serving our country like it was the most important. It was like a religious experience. And she was talking, so the conversation was about trans people, but the idea of just people in general, being in the Coast Guard or, being in, she didn't say this, but the same thing, being in the military or being in the fire department, serving our country. The idea of how some people around the world, Brianna's just fallen out of the boat because of her views on Israel recently. I can see people in the chat saying Brianna is cringe.
Right.
But there's been a big hubbub about that. So we'll get into that conversation another day. But all I'm saying is I heard her, the way she even spoke about people serving the country in the Coast Guard, it just made me kind of go, it's really interesting to think about how we relate to our own country. Because I think in New Zealand, we're all a bit like, New Zealand's all right. I like it. It's pretty cool. And we don't have that nationalist fervor. And I mean, there used to be this idea, that you'd be patriotic and then you'd be nationalist and then you'd be fascist. That's sort of the line from patriotism to nationalism to fascism sort of thing. And a lot of Americans, even the ones that some people might identify to be on our side, are right in that nationalist phase. I mean, we were talking about Brian Tamaki last night, actively saying nationalism is patriotism. I don't know. I guess these ideas in my head at the moment going around about China and about, who we are as a country and, how we serve our country and what we think of our country. We don't have that vibe of, someone saying worshipping the military, that vibe of worship,
I guess
and how it happens in America.
I guess we've sort of displaced that worship to World War I and the Anzacs and the whole legend around that. And Anzac Day does sort of get on my nerves sometimes. Like, obviously, respect the fallen, lest we forget, all that sort of thing. But it could have this year, and some people try and make it this, and obviously it shouldn't solely be this, but it could have been a really good moment to talk about, again, these things that I'm talking about, our place in, America's place in the world, our place in America's place in the world, things like that, things like Gaza, et cetera, it really could have been an opportunity. But we, in terms of our nationalism and our patriotism, we perform it in different ways, I guess, with our rugby, with our sport. The other day, Scott Dixon, he's, won a couple of races in IndyCar this year. So we won, I was able to say we won last night or this morning
Pavlova,
or whatever,
Pavlova is ours. Stay away from Pavlova, Australia.
These sort of things. Whereas I guess that the United States is, instead of displacing it in that far off time of World War I and stuff, they've well and truly continued it forward to today. And again, it's similar to, like I was saying with common sense before, it's unquestioned the role of the military, the Americans' role in the military, and what you were just discussing then with Brianna Wu. So it's unquestioned, like common sense is unquestioned.
It's probably part of the culture. But I think it was Michael Hurst. I heard Michael Hurst talking in an interview about the character he played he was in Hercules and Xena and those series. And he was like explaining in America how they went to Comic-Con and that kind of stuff, and he had to have security, and the vibe. I mean, this is, a little actor from New Zealand had security around him, and people were trying to get at him. He was that sort of, because there's this fervor for, for celebrity, and there's this fervor for, this enthusiasm. America's the only place that use thank you as a curse word. No, thank you very much. They throw it at you, sort of thing. And he told this story about the difference between America and Australia. He comes home and he's going down, Ponsonby Road on his, and a kid flies past on a skateboard. I can't remember the name of the character he played in Hercules. Let's call him Iago. I don't know what it was. And the kid flew past him on the skateboard and gave him the East Coast hello. You know that one? Yeah. He just goes, hey, Iago, and just kept going. And he goes, that was the difference for him between, America, you need security if you've got any profile. New Zealand, the kid knows who you are. They just fly past you on the skateboard and keep on going. And I think you can then see that in American culture as well. And that then works its way out when people start talking about, people have used the word worshipping the military, or, the highest thing you can do is serve the country and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, let us just give you guys a chance now to say we will open up Discord next. Okay, we're going to do one more story about Kieran McAnulty on breakfast this morning, and then we'll come in and we'll have a bit of a chat with anyone who wants to. If there's one people, if there's two people, probably not if there's 10, because it might go for a bit long. But, let's do this. I'll tell you what, we'll give away a T-shirt as well to someone who jumps in and has a chat with us. One of the T-shirts from the drop. You can pick any one of the T-shirts you want, either a BHN T-shirt or a personalised T-shirt or a crew T-shirt or a buffer T-shirt. So we'll give a T-shirt away. And just randomly to someone who has a chat with us. So you get into Discord. This is Discord. Down here in the bottom left-hand corner, there is a waiting room. You can already see there's a couple of people there. Jump into the waiting room. Make sure you have your YouTube off. Don't listen to us on YouTube, or we'll say, good day there. Who are you? And you'll hear it 15 seconds later on YouTube. So if you're in the waiting room, listen to us through Discord, and we'll do that next. And Kiwi Skirt, there you go. Already done it. Already ahead of me doing it there. Old Kiwi Skirt got the job done. And while we do that, let's go and have a look at the last kind of story we're talking about. And this is actually about MP's expenses. It's probably one of the biggest stories, New Zealand stories of this week. And this is good because Kieran McAnulty, it's interesting, because there is a bunch of conversations going around at the moment about entitlements and stuff. And Kieran McAnulty seems to have got himself caught up in this where he didn't need to. He explains in this how the ombudsman, I think it's called, or the person in charge of pecuniary interests, actually told him he didn't need to declare this, but he wanted to declare this because he didn't want there to be anything untoward accusations. And because he declared it, he's now caught up in the middle of this whole thing with, I think, 22 other MPs who are taking... there's 23 MPs, I believe, taking the allowance for their own properties. And the solution we had last night, George, was it's pretty simple. If your name's on the mortgage, you don't get the allowance. If you're renting a flat off a rando, no problems at all. Take the allowance. Because as they're going to say in this one shortly, if you were advancing your own wealth, then that's a bit on the nose. So let's have a listen to what Kieran in particular has to say, because he's sort of having to defend his honesty now, and then we're going to have a bit of a chat about perks, and then we can go to Discord. Here we go.
Kieran, obviously I'm going to start with you. Why do you feel comfortable renting a property that your wife owns?
This is a recent development for us. It's happened since we got married in January. I've always claimed the supplement as an MP that's based outside Wellington. Basically, every MP that isn't based in either Wellington, the Hut or Porirua gets access to this so that they can have accommodation. And the rules have always been, well, certainly as long as I've been there, that you can use it for a hotel or a rental, or if you happen to own the property, you can use it to pay the costs associated with it.
This is part of the rules.
Yeah.
It's what you're entitled to. But should you be able to profit off your own property? I know it's under her name, but you're married.
Yeah, look, we weren't trying to be tricky about that. That's just the truth. That's the situation. And so we were upfront about that. In fact, what's interesting here is that the registrar of the pecuniary interest, the guy that looks after all the declarations, he advised me that technically I didn't have to declare it. And so I wasn't required to. But I felt uncomfortable about that.
It's not a good look, though. You can claim up to $36,000, right?
I think it's a fair question. And I think that aspect of it is what really appears to have caught people's attention. I don't think anyone actually says that MPs shouldn't be able to use this allowance to have accommodation in Wellington. That generally is fine. It's the ownership part of it.
Yes.
And so for me, that's been relevant since January. And now I've certainly noticed this because it's the first time we've declared it. I think it's the REM authority that decide these rules. I'm sure they're taking note of this. If they look to review it, there's absolutely no way I think that any MP will get.
Look, I think they're going to review it, and I think what'll end up happening, I believe the UK has a model that says exactly that. You can't pay for your own house. You can pay to stay in another person's house, but not your own house. And what you'll also see is no one's going to smash anyone on this, because on some level they're all doing it. So we're going to go to Chris Bishop in a second. He's going to be like, oh, no, even though Chris Bishop has no benefit from it because he lives in Lower Hutt, Upper Hutt, one of the huts.
They'll look out for each other.
Yeah, and because if the Bish goes terrible, 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 then of course you point at the 12 national MPs that are doing it, and it's the same sort of thing. But let's keep hearing from Uncle Josh. You go, George.
Yeah. Oh, just Kieran's response is like classic sort of politician response, or just trying to distract attention by basically explaining the process of how the news came about, like talking about, we didn't have to disclose it, but we did anyway, that's kind of good, eh? And instead of actually talking about the substance of the issue, just talking about that process and the fact that he did good because he disclosed it himself.
Yeah,
if I've interpreted that right, I mean, I'm not across this whole story, but just from that response,
I guess
that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, it's. I wonder if he now regrets disclosing it, because if he hasn't have disclosed it, he could well have been, not having to go through this information. Sorry, I'm just setting up Discord while we're talking, but we'll keep going, hear what the Bish has got to say.
My understanding is that actually it has to be legislated, so that would then become a government issue.
Right.
For the PM. Anyway, I want to bring you in here, Chris. I mean, this is not a good look. This is $36,000 for, anywhere between $36,000 and $52,000 that MPs can claim. So if you own a property in Wellington and you have to travel into Wellington, then you can claim back on that, right? It's not a good look. Should there be change to this?
Well, look, I mean, the rules are set independently, so we're just working within what's set by the independent rule makers. I think basically no one disagrees with the principle that if you have to travel for work, that should be covered.
Yeah.
MPs, I live in the hut, so I don't get it. I've never had it. Obviously, I go to and from work each day. But people, someone coming from Northland, they're coming to Parliament for 32 weeks a year, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Someone's got to pay for them to be in Wellington.
Yeah, and
so
I don't
the way
think
it works is they get an allowance.
Yeah, and as you say, I don't think anybody is, against that, because like your position, Kieran, you have to travel, what, hour and a half, hour and 40 from the Wairarapa through to Wellington, so that's not the issue. But whether MPs should be able to profit from that accommodation allowance, that is the question.
Yeah,
should that change?
I think, as the PM has said and Kieran said as well, I mean, I think and Chris Hipkins has said as well, I mean, we can have a look at that. If I suspect it probably will be looked at.
Yeah.
People use the allowance. I know MPs, some people rent an apartment. No one's got a drama with that. Other people stay in a hotel. Other people buy a house so they've got, or an apartment so they've got a bit of stability so they can,
You're not renting your partner's apartment though, that's the point.
Yeah, well, look, I mean...
It's taxpayer money. I'm just, I mean, Kieran, are you open to that being changed?
Yeah, I said that earlier. If they want to have a look at it, I certainly won't get in the way. I mean, whenever these independent processes happen, they always ask MPs for feedback. And so MPs do have the opportunity to say whether they support it or not. I've always taken the view that, well, if it's independent, then they don't actually need to know what I think. So if they want to look at it, go for gold. For me personally, it looks a bit weird when I say, I'm renting it from my wife, but that's just the truth. It is the situation that we have. It's not my house. I still declared it because I wanted to be upfront, even though I wasn't required to, because you should be upfront if that's the situation. But God, if they want to have a look at it, good as gold.
Yeah, probably a pretty good response from old Kieran there, because what else could you say? And he can't really get called on it, can he? Because he's like, I did what I was supposed to. I went above and beyond what I was supposed to do. But yeah, it does have that kind of vibe from all of them of feathering their nest a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you saw it with Bishop, right? It teed up to criticise the other side of the house, and he can't. He's stuck. they used to and ah about it. I think with the Labour chat, McAnulty, what's his name? Kieran
the next Prime Minister.
Oh, right. Yes. No, I remember you saying that a long time ago. Surely you'd, and someone in the chat said, "Who the fuck cares?" And on the surface, I would say that, but it's like that. This is sort of what corruption is more generally, right? Is that you're using public funds to profit yourself. And surely he could have stopped and thought at that moment that maybe it's not a good idea.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. It's also the optics, what they decide to do. And I also think that there is a different yardstick if you're a National Party MP, but only because the National Party has spent the past 18 months talking about, we're not going to treat the country like an ATM. Literally, we're not going to treat the people like an ATM is what Luxon has said. And they've said about waste, and they said about, $36,000 on a lunch and this kind of stuff. So what we try and do here, George, as much as we can, at the very least, is to hold National to the same standard they insisted on holding Labour to. And the irony is at the moment, there's lots of stuff happening that if it was 18 months ago, National would be screaming at Labour for doing that they're doing themselves, so... and I think this is one of the things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give... I was just also... I don't know if you heard the little beeps and bongs I was doing there. I was testing that old Discord was working because we can have a crack at it, I think, if you guys want to. I am going to just do a bit of a heads up and say if this doesn't work, this will be a very quick end of the show. Also to remind you, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, this will be, I guess, your last heads up to get your June merch for this week, because 9 a.m. tomorrow morning I'll send the order off to the printer. Remember, we are supporting the Cancer Society with all of our buffer gear, and all you need to do is head to bhnshop.nz. JC, I'm going to come to you in just a sec, so if you want to get your mic turned on and your YouTube turned off, and we have a bit of a chat, and I don't know if you guys have got questions for George or anything you want to talk about, but this MP's conversation is probably a good one to bounce off the back of as well. Discord, I'm assuming that Kiwi Skirts put Discord link in there a few times. We won't stay here for a long time. We can have 3 or 4 minutes each, and then we'll move on. So let's see if this scary thing is working by going and saying hello to JC. JC, you are with us. Turn your mic on and say good day. And this is where we find out if... Oh, and JC did the equivalent of just hanging up. Don't know why JC pulled out. So we're just going to go to JK just saying, because we know his link works, and then we'll come back to some of the other people as well. JK, you with us?
Yep, I'm with you.
There we go. And George, say good day to see if JK can hear you.
Good day, JK.
Yep, I can hear both of you.
Right, we're all working. What's up, sir?
Well, my car got stolen this morning.
Oh no! What kind of car?
A little Aqua, a little hybrid EV. So that's a bit disappointing. They've found it already. Someone took it for a joyride. Still not in favour of boot camps.
So even if those guys were going to a boot camp, you wouldn't be in favour of it?
No, it wouldn't help them at all. Wouldn't do I'm sorry, almost slipped out. Wouldn't do a thing to solve any problem.
Just so you know, you can use whatever language you want here. It's not a problem. We're on the internet, my friend. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, but I try not to.
Okay, fair enough. So no to boot camps, eh? Yeah, I mean, we're still trying to figure out why this is the plan of this government.
The definition of insanity is national.
I thought you were going to do it. I thought you were going to say it. What is it? What's the actual saying? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Which is national.
Yeah. All right, JK. Anything else you want to get off your chest tonight?
No, that'll do.
All right.
That'll do.
Well, that means we know the system's working.
See you, George. Haven't seen you before. I'm not old enough to have seen you. Oh, not old enough here to have seen you before. Yeah, should come back.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah,
Jaws is an OG, JK. So thank you for
cheers, JK.
For being with us.
Yeah, Toyota Aqua's most stolen car in the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some people are having to pay insurance of up to $3,000. There's an RNZ story out there if anyone's interested. But yeah, $3,000 a year on insurance.
Gosh, I only pay like $2,800 a year for my car, and it's, you know, it's you know, significantly more upgraded than an Aqua. So
yeah,
really, that's massive. All right. Remember, if you go for a chat with us tonight, that puts you in the draw, but you got to be chatting. That puts you in the draw for a T-shirt or something as well that you can take your pick of. And I think at the moment we've only got one more person, so it's a 1 in 2 chance at the moment. So you can jump into Discord now and come have a chat, or we can wrap up the show very, very shortly. James, you with us, man? Hello, James. James might.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. I was about to say James might be listening to us on YouTube. Hi, James.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah. Oh, you can hear me. Oh
Yep.
my goodness.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I just got a particular bee in my bonnet about jobs for nature.
Go on then.
Have you heard about it? I've got a article up here about. I couldn't find the article about it being cancelled. I heard about it on the news this morning. And they said that it's got a $1.9 billion budget and employs over 5,000 people. And the funding has just been cut by National.
All right.
Yeah, no longer funding it. So I just thought, I immediately went back and thought of that $3 billion that they gave landlords, and I thought, wow.
Of course. So we've got.
There's just another thing that we can sort of stack on top of all the other things that they've slashed.
Yeah.
They've also slashed thousands of jobs for planting plants, native plants, and so on around the country.
So the story on
improving our environment.
The story on RNZ says conservation projects around the country are in jeopardy as funding through the previous government's Jobs for Nature program comes to an end. So it's probably, if I'm being, I like to be fair, it's probably that, not that they cut it, they didn't renew it the way that that's written. But either way,
Yes.
they've made a decision for it to go away.
Yes. It's just another thing that they've decided they're not going to pay for.
Yeah. Like cancer drugs for people dying from cancer and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
That's crazy. That
I mean, they didn't promise to fund Jobs for Nature, like they promised to fund cancer drugs and then didn't. But at the same time, it is a project that is a huge project and provided a lot of jobs for New Zealanders and did a lot of good for our environment, that they are now just like, yeah, but we're talking about $1.9 billion, I think was what they said on I'm looking at the job. If you look up Jobs for Nature on Radio NZ, there's an article from 2022, more than 5,000 jobs and 3.2 million plants so far, and that was in February 2022.
So is that
ongoing?
So is that what they do? They plant? Is that all they do, or are there other jobs for nature that they do? Do you know?
There's actually a website, so it's ongoing, and they're saying they interviewed someone who said, "Oh, well, we don't know where we're going to get our funding from now, but we're going to see what we can do about continuing the program."
Yeah.
Jobsfornature.co.nz.
Mm.
And it says allocated more than $1 billion in last year's budget. That's in February, as of February 2022, aimed at funding 11,000 nature-based jobs across 4 years.
Yeah. Wow. George, you were going to say something there.
I mean, that's a massive program. I was thinking, I was about to talk about all the little programs that we don't know about that that are cut or that we know about that sort of fall through the cracks. But 1.19 billion, I think, is the number, is massive. And someone in the chat makes a good point that something like this, a public works program, would be a lot better than the boot camps idea that we were discussing before.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that. Imagine sending people who would otherwise be doing time or have been convicted of something to go do a little bit of community service.
Well, as long as
that's not necessarily the best.
No, as long as they're getting the right help as well, because I think just throwing them into the bush to plant things is not that different for them as going to boot camp.
It's going to boot camp,
but because it's all about that therapeutic stuff, that is what helps. So if it included that, sure,
restorative justice kind of thing, right? Yeah. Because unlike the boot camps, if you're doing this, you can come away from it going, I planted 100 plants. I planted 100 trees. I actually did something.
Yeah. No, true.
It's a little bit more.
All right, James.
Maybe a little bit better.
Thanks for I never know what to say, George. Calling in. It's not a telephone.
Cheers
for
just
chatting,
calling
James.
in, James.
Dropping
Just
by.
for dropping by.
Yeah.
Cheers for dropping by. Now, C. Franchi has been in and out a couple of times. I don't know if C. Franchi's going to be there, but we'll give it a crack because C. Franchi was there earlier. Are you there, C. Franchi? C. Franchi. Oh, yep. There's mic's gone off. Hello.
Kia ora, you there?
Hey, kia ora. Yes, we're here. What's up?
Awesome. First time calling in. Just want to say awesome show.
Thanks, man.
What was on my mind tonight was just been on Instagram watching Tamitha Paul talking about basically the attacks on Māori and kind of she said that Māori women are the most incarcerated group of Indigenous people in the world.
Oh, really?
Interesting fact. But I think it's important when we think about the attacks on Māori to realise that it's not just culture, it's not just health and well-being. We're actually looking at locking up a whole bunch more of them with a whole bunch of the different laws that they're bringing in.
Yeah.
So stuff like the cultural reports that they're not funding anymore, the 3 strikes law coming back, the gang patch bans, the boot camps, the ram raid bill,
and
all of that.
And the actively building 5,000 new beds that Seymour was going on about. So they're
Was it 1.9
yeah,
billion?
they're actually aiming to have more people in prison, hence building 5,000 new beds. But yeah.
It's just shocking, and it's like it feels like it's intentional that there's just so much bullshit all at the same time, so you can't actually keep up with it. But I was writing a little list of the attacks on Māori, and it's like it just goes on for just about a page.
Yeah.
I've been to more protests in the last 6 months than I've been to in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Is it intentional? Are they actually just trying to wear us out?
Look, and something I realised the other day, I'm a bit slow and it takes me a little bit longer to catch up with everybody else there, Franchi, is Luxon lied a lot before the election. And there was lots of things he said he would do, for example, 13 cancer drugs, that he hasn't done. And there were some things that they said that didn't say they'd do, Smoke Free 2025, which they have done. So to be honest, when they talk about we're only going to get this, the treaty referendum on its first reading, it's like, well, hang on. You said lots of other things you were or weren't going to do that you did the opposite on. I'm less confident that this is only going to be a first reading and then go away. They lied about it previously. And as I've been saying for a year now, no one has yet said that this won't be a conscience vote. So maybe Luxon after the first reading will go, we're going to make this a conscience vote. And then that means people are free to do whatever they want, which could be terrifying.
We need to be watching that like a hawk, because that's just dangerous, that legislation. So
yeah. All right, man. Well, it's lovely to hear from you. Thanks for calling in.
Cheers.
We appreciate your voice for radio there. And I think Aidan will be the last for the night. We'll have a quick chat with Aidan. Aidan, are you with us?
Hello, lads. How's it going?
Good, man. Have you been around long enough to remember George, Aidan?
I haven't, George. Nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah. Welcome. What's up?
So I have been thinking a lot about this thing, and it's been a hot topic in the Discord. No one seems to know 100% what's going on. The idea of a Māori parliament, it fascinates me because I actually heard Chloe speak on it, and she was saying it's bringing how we treat and integrate with Māori going forward. Just about bringing up the discussion. And I don't know how to feel about it. I still feel Māori have been hard done by in this country. And if we can bring more attention to how we go forward And as Pākehā tangata treaty, I don't think it's, our say. We need to let them have a seat at the table, and
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of different things. There's a couple of different things there, Aidan. I don't think there's ever going to. Oh no, I can't say ever, but there's no. I don't think there's any flavour for a Māori Parliament per se, as in a completely separate, Parliament for and by Māori. Because I mean, if you even have a look at the Māori roll, there's not all Māori are not represented on the Māori roll, but it could evolve into a conversation, as you're alluding to there, about representation, maybe a different way of passing legislation, a different layer. It could be another layer added as opposed to something completely separate. And as we always remind people, remember, co-governance, when it first came along, was the 150,000 Māori in New Zealand inviting the 5,000 Europeans to the table. That was the original co-governance. That was a model for co-governance. We will give your non-Māori a seat at the table. And as soon as Europeans took the majority, they started to say, well, shall we let Māori come to the table? It's actually Māori's table. It's their table. And so co-governance isn't us inviting Māori into the table. It's actually the other way around. It's how it's always been set up. So I think that there obviously should always be a representation of everybody at the table, and Māori should definitely be a part of that as one of the two signatories to our founding document. What are your thoughts, George?
Yeah, I mean, the atmosphere around the issue definitely seems like it's ramping up in terms of these radical new ideas, like a separate parliament, which is probably not that new. But in this current environment, seems like a radical departure from, maybe a more, a singular New Zealand identity and representation and everyone equal and that idea that seemed so happy and clappy 30 years ago or whatever. I sometimes, to be honest, and obviously Pākehā, feel uncomfortable about getting too separated, or and I'm ignorant about all these issues, to tell you the truth. But I fear a separation, for example, a completely different parliament, because I feel like there's so many issues that that transcend obviously those boundaries of Pākehā and Māori that can be, that can be tackled in one place, and in one parliament or whatever it is, in one institution, in one Ministry of Health or one Ministry of Social Development, etc., etc. But
I think that it's probably Rawiri talking about it. I think it's a really good way to put Māori issues at the forefront of the table. It almost feels like, to me, and I'm not speaking on behalf of it, I've got no idea, but it almost feels like this is the extreme we could insist on if we needed to. Now let's negotiate. Like, let's figure out how this is going to work. But it's an interesting topic. Aidan, is there anything else you want to wrap up with?
No, I just, obviously, and
yeah. All right, mate.
I'm not sold on the issue, but I'm in support of Māori and what they want to do. I mean, it's, I'm the buffer.
Yeah, nice. Excellent, brother. You're the buffer. Well done. I think that's what you all need to be who are non-Māori. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you for the call, Aidan. We appreciate it. And, anything you want to say, George, to wrap up the kind of conversations we just had?
No. I mean, I'm all good.
All right.
It's good to be here then.
I've written down the four callers in a random order, so they're not the order they came on. And you, sir, need to pick a number 1 to 4.
Let's go 3 for Dale Earnhardt.
C. Franchi is number 3. So Franchi, or it might be C.F. Franchi, or it might be C. Franchi, or it might be C. Franch Y.
He had a great voice.
Yeah, great voice. You need to email us.
Great voice, Franchi.
bighearingnews@gmail.com, and tell us, if you do it before 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, tell us what T-shirt you want, what size you want, and we'll get it put in to tomorrow's order, and hopefully you'll have it by the end of next week. Hey, George, it was great to have you here, mate. It was lots of fun to be back again. It feels like old times.
Yeah, no, it's good. You know, I'm a bit rusty in terms of this whole public speaking thing. I always prefer writing a lot more than this kind of carry on. But the engagement is amazing. You've really built something special here, and I mean, not just Pat and Chewy, but obviously the audience are, you know, big, huge part of that. And you know, I was hopeful at the start, but you know, I never thought it would be anything like this.
Well, that's just about the niche and the people that want to be a part of what we do, and everyone getting alongside us. It was great. And now what we get to do, George, is we get to finish off the show. In fact, someone actually sent me a new theme song that we could have used tonight that's got you in it, because they knew you were coming on. So I'll send you a copy of that. I haven't hooked it up because for me to use it, I have to do all the graphics and stuff as well. So thank you for that, Gold, sending it through. But we're going to go with our theme song, our closing theme song. And yeah, we'll talk to you in a couple of minutes at the end of the song. Standing by.
And sure, pick up the news. Big hairy style, keeping it loose. New Zealand, where the politics play, they bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just facts straight up. Pat and Chewy, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and Chewy, they'll make the right choice.
All right, team, thanks for being a part of what we do. If you want to become a patron, all these lovely people going past us right now, head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. You genuinely make a difference. You help us to do this. You enable us to keep on being able to operate and pay a few of the bills on the way. George, thank you so much for joining us tonight, mate. It's been a lot of fun to have you back on board.
Cheers,
happy
Pat.
birthday to you for today.
Cheers, mate.
And happy birthday to Chewy for Tuesday, and also happy birthday to me for tomorrow. It's a birthday time. And remember, bhnshop.nz if you want to get your order in for that merch. If you get it in before 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, it'll be on tomorrow's order. You'll have it next week. Stay safe, everybody. Have a good weekend. Come back next week. Bring a friend. We'll see you Monday night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo!